Well, our house was cold, and now it's warm. Thanks, insulation.
Love it.
We don't have to put that in there. I just want it.
No,
It's just a
not in
funny.
there.
So we have 3 different types of insulation in our house. The ceiling has one kind. The walls have another kind, and the subfloor is a different kind. So the subfloor has rigid foam boards. It's called polyiso, and our walls have mineral wool bats. And then our ceiling was closed-cell spray foam. So I don't have a physical example of the polyiso because it's all under the floors, and our manufacturer did that portion for us. But it's just rigid boards, and you just spray foam around any crevices, any edges, so that it's all sealed. For our walls, some type of bat was an obvious choice, but I looked at a lot of different materials. I was interested in like sheep's wool or hemp wool, but we just don't really have access to that. It's too hard to acquire. Bummer. So we went with rock wool. I chose that because it's a lot more fun to put up than stapling fiberglass. Also, I hate fiberglass. Also, the R value I think is a tiny bit higher than fiberglass, but what I most like about it is how dense it is, and so it's a lot better at soundproofing, and it's just tension held, so there's no staples or nails or anything. You just press, like you squish it, put it in between your studs, and then it holds itself with tension. Here's a little bit of one, just a little scrap of a bat. So it's quite dense, and so it looks like. There's no paper facing on it, and it's water resistant, bug resistant, mold resistant, all of the things. Oh, and it's pretty darn fire resistant as well. So all good things. So using the rock wool was pretty fun. I mean, the small weird gaps, especially like parts with lots of wires, was a bit tedious, but yeah, overall it went well. The only tools you need for insulating with rock wool is literally just a bread knife, some gloves, tape measure, and a mask. That's it. It's still got really tiny particles like fiberglass does, and so you want to wear a mask and gloves so you don't breathe it in, and because it is a bit itchy. But otherwise, like, all you need to do is cut it, and a bread knife or a serrated kitchen knife is the best tool for that, so that's what we used. And you just over measure a bit, so like whatever space you're gonna insulate, add on like maybe half an inch, so you still get that tension fit. It can't just like be sitting in there. It needs to be kind of gently squished. Not too much, because if it compacts, then it loses R value. You want it just the right amount where it's snug, but not stuffed. And that's the ticket. The ceiling, we ended up closed-cell spray foaming. That's less environmentally friendly than just like a rock wool bat. However, because we're utilizing like the full height of our house minus 6-7 inches from the studs and the roofing, and so unlike a traditional house where you have a flat ceiling and then the roof goes much higher, and you have this big space that you can blow in loose insulation or put in super thick bats. We only had 5.5 inches to work with to insulate the whole roof of our house, and so closed-cell spray foam has the highest R value per inch of any insulation option that there is out there. It's also a good water barrier, resistant to all the bad things. It's very dense, and so we were pretty comfy with using it just for our ceiling to get that higher R value so that you don't lose heat quite as much. And it works. We are just using a tiny little propane heater at the moment, and it is so much more comfortable in here. This is what it looks like when it's applied. It's really dense. It doesn't give it all. And here's a loose piece. Really, really strong. Super dense. I don't know if you can do a close shot of that. But yeah, it's about 3 to 4 inches thick, I think. It's pretty smooth, but it is kind of uneven, just because it's sprayed on. And so they taped everything off in our house and then sprayed. You have to do that professionally. We can't do it ourselves, and so I did all of and just helped do all of the wall insulation, and then the ceiling. We had some guys come in, spray foam. It just took I don't know, maybe 8 hours, including setup and cleanup at the end. Then afterwards, they just scrape along all the beams to get the excess off. And this is the final product. This is how it looks. So we'll just attach our ceiling panels directly to the studs from here. And then of course, any gaps in the walls or things, we just, used the regular can of spray foam to make sure that everything was pretty airtight. So the time it took me/us to insulate all of the walls it definitely took less than a week. And yeah, again, the spray foam guys took about 8 hours. That was a single day thing. The ceiling cost us about $1,600, and all of the wall insulation cost us about $750. So because it's so well insulated now, and it's a small space, condensation, humidity, ventilation is all important in small homes. More important than a lot of people think. And so the strategically placed windows across from each other enables a ton of cross breeze. So if it gets too humid in here, we could literally just open up some of our windows and all of the air will be like flushed out in a few minutes, which is great. But we wanted to have options. So our bathroom has a fan because that is essential. It's such a small space. And that goes directly outside in the wall. We also have another fan that's the same kind in our kitchen to reduce humidity while we're cooking. And in the wintertime, if it becomes an issue, then we can also light up our wood stove, and that is an excellent way to dry out the air. You just have to open a window a little bit so that fresh air can come in as it pulls our air out. So we have a lot of ways. We're not even sure how much humidity will be an issue here, since where we live, the air outside is bone dry all months of the year. So it'd really just be from us living in here and breathing, and our dog and my plants, that will cause any humidity. So we wanted to have a lot of options in case that is an issue. We also had to insulate the wheel wells because that's just a thin layer of metal that separates the inside of the house to the outside, like open air from the outdoors. And so that obviously needed to be insulated as well. It felt silly using like bats on it, and so especially because I'm going to be building around the wheel wells for most of that area, we decided to do rigid foam boards for that as well. They're only 1 inch thick, but before, obviously, because it's metal, the heat transference is pretty insane. So you could touch the bare wheel well and it was an ice cube because it's winter time. But now that it's covered with just that inch of of foam board, it's like you don't feel cold at all. And so that'll be pretty easy to build around, and it doesn't take up that much space, but it's going to make a big difference with that heat transference. So here's the outside of the wheel wells, just so you can see. So this was just the other side of this metal was what used to be the inside of the house, and so that's why it was so important to insulate it. My favorite part about insulating was having it done. No, honestly, I'd say it was more satisfying doing like the living room area because it's floor to ceiling. You can see all that area be perfectly covered. Every square inch is nice to look at. It was exciting doing the walls of the loft because the ceiling height is obviously so much shorter that like it's comfortable up here, and we just have a tiny little heat source across the house. It was kind of fun like measuring between all of the studs because I mean, you should just pan over to that little wall. Like, it's not a normal distance, so we can't just take a bat and shove it in. We had to cut basically every single piece. And so part of that was definitely like a headache. It was annoying. But part of it was also kind of fun once you get that like really good snug fit and you see it and you know that it's gonna last a long time and do its job really well. That part was fun.